Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Candace Armour. I'm super excited to have you guys on here. And I really feel led recently to share more about my personal journey to walking in sexual purity and really why I decided to stop having sex. So, first, I want to just kind of take you back to like the beginning of my exposure to sexuality, kind of what made me initially want to start having sex, and then what made me kind of make that decision to actually stop having sex until I'm married. I'm from Chicago, currently unmarried, single, not dating, but I'm in a very unique space in my life where I'm super focused on my career, super focused on just discovering purpose, discovering identity. And there was a time when I had no idea what any of that was. And so I just kind of want to take you on a journey back to when I was younger. I pretty much was exposed to sexuality at an extremely young age by way of pornography. So that was late night HBO, all of that stuff, all that jazz. And I was really young. I was probably under 10 years old. And from there, that was like my exposure to the world about sexuality. And I remember this one time having my mom. Like I remember she was like doing something with her hair and she accidentally like burned her neck with the curlers. And I remember being in like first or second grade and my mom's like, yeah, like I'm trying to cover my neck because I was burnt with the curlers. And I was like, yeah, you don't want anyone to think that you had sex. And I'm like, in second grade, my mom is like, wait, what? Like, what? Like, she's probably like, how does this child even know what sex is? So I was exposed to sexuality at a very young age, and it kind of like opened a door to kind of promiscuity as well as perversion. So throughout like my middle school years and early into high school, I had been exposed to actual pornography. So I'm a millennial, so growing up, we now had not only porn on HBO or whatever else that was like kind of soft porn, you now had this kind of X-rated content that was up online at our fingertips because of the internet. And so I had gotten drawn into kind of being exposed to porn in that way and honestly developed an addiction to pornography. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But that's what really made me comfortable with having sex for the first time. So I was this girl when I was younger that, you know, I was always made fun of because, yes, I'm black, but I was made fun of because I was so light. People would tell me that I'm white. So I would be like, no, I'm not white. And I would just have this identity crisis. So I always had this issue with who I was as a woman and what I looked like. Not only that, I was a little bit bigger than my peers. I was always thicker. So I kind of got made fun of for having a big butt at a young age. I got made fun of for just being bigger than my peers. And I started to have this negative self-image. And how this all kind of intertwined was I had made this decision. Well, I didn't necessarily make a decision, but this all intertwined because I had this low self-esteem that I was struggling with. And I didn't really know who I was. And I was exposed to pornography. And then by the time I got to high school, I kind of slimmed up a little bit. You know, everybody from 8th grade to high school, you get a little bit cuter over the summer. And so I started growing into myself, people started looking at me, men and boys started looking at me as if, you know, I was attractive, and I started to get attention from men. And so that drew me into a place of getting affirmation from men in ways that I had never gotten it from anybody before. Even though I was raised in the church and my parents loved me and told me just how amazing I was as a woman, or, you know, that I was beautiful, somehow in the midst of that, I never really saw myself as beautiful. So when these young boys were in my life and were telling me I was cute and all this stuff, it really stuck with me, and I felt loved in that capacity. And so I remember my first boyfriend, I was 15. I just knew we were so deep in love. We were like so like in love, talking about some of everything. And we were 15 years old, and we lost our virginity to one another. And I remember just being curious and kind of being pressured into it from friends like, "Ooh, you love him. Are you going to do it?" And I was in this place where like I actually did want to do it on my own, and I was really curious, but at the same time, like I said, I was raised in the church. I knew it was wrong, but I also was like, it looks like it feels so amazing, so I want to try what's good, right? And so I basically tried it at the age of 15 and had been doing it ever since, right? So I was in this relationship with this guy and I was 15. Like, I literally didn't even love myself. And I fell into the cycle of being in and out of ungodly relationships from the age of 15 into my early 20s. And I remember in college, I was in this relationship with this guy that we were dating for about 2 years. And we were considering getting married, we were considering eloping. And honestly, I had gotten to this point where I was like trying to figure out why I was placed on this earth. I was trying to figure out what my purpose was, what I would spend the rest of my life doing, particularly because me and this boyfriend of 2 years had been in a place where we're like, yo, like, we love each other. Let's maybe get married and not tell our parents and just make it happen. And I went through this internal battle because when you're talking about spending the rest of your life with someone, you really have to know yourself well enough to know that, my purpose will be fulfilled in this relationship with this person. And I was nervous because I didn't even know myself for real. So I just was not comfortable saying, okay, I'll be in this relationship with you. And so I told my boyfriend at the time, I'm like, yo, we should basically stop trying to have sex. Like, we should get our lives right. And we tried it so many times and it never worked. And then I finally got to this point where I was like, I knew my relationship wasn't honoring God. And if I really wanted to spend the rest of my life with someone, I wanted a relationship that honored God and gave glory to God. Even though in the midst of my foolishness, I was out here going to church in the morning on a Sunday, but, waking up in the same bed with my boyfriend the night before. So I just knew that the way that I was kind of living wasn't right. And I had this desire to really live right. Long story short, I ended up breaking up with that boyfriend. I actually said a prayer to God and was like, God, if this man is not meant for me, then he will, break up with me and I won't even have to do anything. Literally the next phone conversation that I had with my boyfriend of 2 years, he called me and told me he knew I was prolonging my breakup until graduation and that he was going to do it for me because he knew that I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. And I was like, wow, he broke up with me. I was fine until, because I was on Christmas break at the time, I was fine until I got back to school and I had no one around me, right? I realized at that point that I was like, now looking back, like I was absolutely in a deep, dark cycle of depression. And it was really, really bad because I looked up and realized that I had never been alone. In all of my adulthood years, in all of my life, like I never knew what it meant to be like alone. I was in my 5th year of school because I was doing a master's program. All my friends had left campus. I had spent every waking moment of every day with my boyfriend when I had free time. And I was now in this place where this man who I'd spent so much of my life with, where so much of my identity was wrapped up into, that I didn't know what to do when he was gone. So I went now to start doing what I wanted to not do. Like, I wanted to live this life of purity, but I started hitting up guys that I used to talk to and letting them know, hey, I'm available, right? And so I went from this place of really wanting to pursue the things of God, but also doing the exact opposite. And so I remember my birthday rolled around and I just did not want to be alone. Like, loneliness was trash. I was like, who trying to be by themselves? I'm bad. I'm amazing. I'm this good girl. I got all this stuff going for myself. And I just knew that I didn't need to be alone. And I knew in my head, I'm like, if I'm alone, there's something wrong with me. Like, nobody wants to be with me. I need to be with a man. And so I just, ended back up in ungodly relationships. So I had flown out to see this guy for my birthday. He flew me out for my birthday, and we spent pretty much, my birthday is Valentine's Day weekend. So we spent Valentine's Day weekend, my birthday with him. And it was, essentially great. I was back in this ungodly relationship with this guy, but he was like my dream guy. Like, I just loved everything about this man on paper, but he didn't really treat me all that great, to be honest. He was fine. And honestly, like, our sexual experiences were amazing. So I was like, ain't nothing wrong with this, right? Next thing I know, going into the night of my birthday, and this was my 23rd birthday. So going into the night of my birthday, I got so drunk, right? And mind you, in that time of depression, like I was drinking very often. But I got to this place where, like I said, I was visiting this guy and I'm in this cycle of depression and I'm drunk. We're all, turned up. That was the term at the time. And I remember being so drunk that I like did not remember. And I just remember coming to in the middle of the night, like going in and out of consciousness and waking up to being taken sexually advantage of by the guy's friend. Now, I thought I was in a safe space, but it was not a safe space at all. That night I was raped, and it's kind of crazy because I didn't ever consider it rape until after the fact. I remember waking up the next morning and being like, did that really happen? Was that something that I did? Like, what did I do to make this guy think that I wanted him? And even though I had been in and out of ungodly relationships, there was something about being taken advantage of or just having sex with somebody that you didn't want to have sex with. Like, and actually saying no, right? And so for me, I just went through this season where like I came back to school and I was like, God, like, whatever it is that you have for me, I know that you have so much better for my life. And, me doing life on my own terms is just not it. Like, I am not in a position to continue doing life on my own because I know it has to be way better with you. And one of the things for me was that God never dealt with me according to my sin. He always dealt with me in a place of love. Like, he forgave me for the decisions that I made, but God began to show me that my identity was based in him. And so in that time, I remember hearing like this, like I was listening to Spotify, and Smokey Norfolk actually came on. I didn't even know that he was a preacher at the time. I just, knew his music. And he came on and he was talking about how our generation makes us believe that if you're not in a relationship or if you're alone, that there's something wrong with you. And he pointed out that there's it's kind of like you misplace your affection and your attention, and you think that basically if you're in something that does not have the character or the essence of God, then it cannot be love because God is love. And I started to think, like, he started talking about how you've been chasing love in all the wrong places. And I realized in that moment, like, wow, like this is what I've been doing my whole life. I've been looking for love in all the wrong places, wanting to be validated by a man, wanting to feel loved by a man, wanting to feel like everything that I was mattered because of me being this amazing woman validated by a man. So even though I had studied mechanical engineering, was about to get my MBA, had accomplished so much in my life at the time, by the age of 23, I still needed that validation from men, right? And so after that, God just kind of took me on a journey to understanding myself. And I talk about this a lot in my devotional, the morning after prayer. And I'll include the link in that in the notes below. But how God just took me on a journey to discovering who I was, and on a journey of really understanding like my identity, learning to love myself, identifying like what I actually deserved in a man, in a husband, learning not to settle. And now, in July, it'll be, I think, 3 years since I've actually had sex. And even that journey along the way, like, and that's a whole nother YouTube video, is just how I actually kind of got to the place of actually being pure and not having sex and overcoming a pornography addiction. All of that stuff was like really, really big for me to actually be able to overcome. But it was something that I had to do with the help of God. But really why I decided to start having sex was to really show myself that I was worth it, and to also, like, I realized I was giving myself away to people who didn't deserve being with me. And they hadn't really done much to, deserve my attention and affection. And I just really wanted to heal from my broken relationships. I wanted to be my best self for my future husband. And I knew that that included me kind of not just settling for men that didn't deserve my attention and affection. And so that's my journey to kind of why I decided to stop having sex. having healed from rape, having healed from, you know, multiple instances of rape. And that was just one of my stories. And just to see how God has healed me over the time and over the years has been so helpful. And you know, not only have I not had sex with anyone, I also have not, you know, kissed anyone. And that for me is really, really big because there was a time when I didn't think I would ever be able to not have sex ever. Like, I just was like, who gonna not have sex? And I just didn't think that would be my story. And so now to see how God has really transformed my life has been really amazing. And so, like I said, in my 30-day devotional, I go into a lot of my story, just how God healed me, how he restored me, and how I went from having sex and wanting to have sex to now making this conscious decision to no longer have sex, and how to really reposition God at the center of my life and at the center of my heart. So I really hope that this encourages you, no matter where you're at, that, you know, if you've been having sex your whole entire life, if you only done it one time, that it's never too late, and that you are valuable, and that, you know, God placed you on this earth with a much greater purpose than just, you know, sex and sexuality and being someone's wife one day. So I just pray and believe that God will be with you in your journey, and no matter what you decide, that there's nothing wrong with, you know, with you making the decision to like live your life fully and wholeheartedly for Jesus. And at the end of the day, you know, for me, that happened to be a byproduct of like purity, happened to be a byproduct of my decision to really pursue God for real, for real. So I hope that blesses you guys. Stay tuned, because I'm going to definitely do more about my personal journey and just how I got through all of that. So thank you so much for staying tuned, and I appreciate you.